Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. Come and eat. Listen diligently.
Now Satan the devil, the serpent, had such success subverting Adam and Eve away from the path of truth and righteousness, away from following Yehovah Elohim, away from this path of the spirit over to the path of the soul, where they would then follow their mind, will, and emotions through the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, where they would then subvert, or that is, the soul man would take dominance over their life instead of following the spirit that is connected to this spirit of Elohim. They then made the soul the dominant ruling figure in their life. Basically, they made self the ruler of their life. They put themselves on the throne of their life. And instead of submitting to the soul, which then is submitted to the spirit, or I'm sorry, instead of submitting to the spirit of Elohim, instead of submitting to their spirit, small s, that submitted to the spirit of Elohim, capital S, where then they would, through this umbilical cord or this feed tube or this connection, be directed by the spirit of Elohim what to do, so that they would follow, base their course of action, base their thoughts, base everything they do, say, and think on the word of Elohim and what he tells them to do, and thereby staying on the path of truth and righteousness, and not falling into the spiritual ditches on this side of the road or the spiritual ditches on that side of the road, but staying on that straight and narrow path that leads to ongoing spiritual relationship with Elohim, that leads all eventually to life and eternal life, and the tree of life, which is a Yeshua, is a picture of, and eventually leads into his eternal kingdom and immortality. Adam and Eve listened to the lies of the devil and ignored the spirit man being led by the spirit of Elohim, and chose to be led by their own carnal desires, their mind, their will, and emotions. And again, we can sum it up in the slogans: if it feels good, do it. Do what thou wilt is the whole law. That is the law of the religion of Satanism and Thelema and things like that. Just do whatever you feel like it. And that was basically the mantra of the 1960s. If it feels good, do it. Whatever you think feels good, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. As long as it's a victimless crime, it's okay. But we see this is a lie of the devil. And the devil had was so successful with Adam and Eve that he tried to do it with Yeshua, who is the second Adam. We read in the book of Romans that Yeshua came as the second Adam to undo the mess that the first Adam got us into. And so before Yeshua launched into his ministry, in Matthew chapter 4, the Ruach, or the Spirit of Elohim, led Yeshua into a wilderness where he was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. And at the end of that, he was very hungry. I can't imagine. And this is in Matthew 4, 1 through 11. And we see that the devil came to put Yeshua to the test, to see if he would remain true and faithful to Yehovah Elohim, if he would remain connected to Elohim and submit his will to Elohim. This is one of the tests that Yeshua the Messiah had to pass. And he tested him in the three areas again: body, soul, and spirit. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. The first thing that Satan tried to do is, it says that Yeshua was very hungry, and Adam said, hey, turn these stones into bread. You have the power to do that. And he challenged his human need. And that would be, I can't imagine after 40 days how hungry I would be and how good bread would taste. When I fast on Yom Kippur for one day, and I fasted up to 3 days before, it's just like that food tastes really good. And even the worst tasting food tastes good. So here the devil tested him in the area of the pride, the lust of the flesh. The flesh was greatly hungry. And Yeshua said, nope, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of Elohim. And he passed that test. And then he tested him in the soul area. He challenged his divinity. And he said, cast yourself down from this high place here, and Elohim will send his angels to protect you. And Yeshua countered him on that point also, that you shall not tempt the Lord your Elohim. And then he tried to tempt him in the area of the pride of life. He said, hey, if you fall down and worship me, I will give you all of these kingdoms. After all, it's my authority. I'm the God of this world, and all the kingdoms of the nations belong to me. And he tried to get Yeshua to renounce his sonship, his authority, or his submission to authority to Elohim, and worship him. And of course, we know that Yeshua thankfully passed all three tests and defeated Satan and overcame them. We also see in the parable of the sower in Matthew 13, we see the devil using the same battle tactic again when he wages war against the body and soul through tribulation, persecution, verse 21, and in the pride of life realm relating to the cares of this world and deceitfulness of riches in verse 22. So the reason I bring this out is because Satan has been trying these tactics down through the ages, and if we're aware of them, then hopefully we will not fall prey to Satan and his tactics. Now we're going to turn a corner here and still continue this subject, but I want to talk about the religion of secular humanism, because this is really where it goes back to. It goes back to Genesis chapter 3. And where in Genesis 3 verse 1, the serpent says serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. And he said, his first question was, has Elohim said? Hath he said? He questioned the word and the authority of Elohim. So Satan is the originator and the great counterfeit, originator of the great counterfeit religious system, which is in opposition to the truth of Elohim. And as I've stated before, all the religions of the world that are non-biblical, and to the degree that the biblical religions are not following the whole truth of Elohim and nothing but, they are fall under the category, under the moniker, the label of secular humanistic to one degree or another. So all religions, except for the truth of the scripture, fall under the power and influence of this satanic system that originated at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All the false religious systems of the world that are non-biblical can be defined basically as secular humanism. And we're going to define the word secular means of this earth, of the world, of the flesh of the devil. And humanism means of the self, of human, of me, myself, and I. What is secular humanism? Well, Francis Schaeffer, the late Francis Schaeffer, wrote a lot of books. And in his book, The Great Evangelical Disaster, which he wrote in the early 1980s, page 32, he said, basically, secular humanism is the freedom from all restraint and especially rebellion against the truth of Elohim. You see, when Satan rebelled against Elohim, he attempted to dethrone the Creator and lift himself up in Elohim's place. We read about that in Isaiah 14, verses 12 through 14. This is the passage where he says, I will exalt, I will this, I will that. He says that several times, 5 times I think it is, 5 or 6 times. And it's all about me, myself, and I. This is the great Lucifer's rebellion, and where Lucifer tried to kick Elohim off his throne. I mean, it's an incredible thing when you think about it. That would be like a flea trying to kick, the president of the United States out of Oval Office or something, but on a much greater level. I mean, it's amazing to think. But this was a rebellion, and here in the Garden of Eden, Satan attempted to subvert the purposes of Elohim by calling into question the character of Elohim before Adam and Eve. The serpent successfully lowered man's esteem for Elohim by calling into question Elohim's authority and by questioning the word of Elohim. And at the same time, he attempted to elevate man's self-esteem for himself at Elohim's expense. Hey, you can become like Elohim. Oh yeah, that sounds great. You don't need to follow his word. You don't need to do what he tells you to do. You can be the master of your own life, and you will have the same knowledge of Elohim, and you're not going to die. You're going to live forever. You have an immortal soul. And of course, this is what Adam and Eve bought into this rebellion. Well, of course, they didn't know that. Satan didn't come out to them and say, I'm really calling Elohim a liar here, and I'm in rebellion against Elohim. I hate Elohim, and I want you to buy into my rebellion that I tried to do back in prehistoric times, in Lucifer, when I was Lucifer and I rebelled back in, that Isaiah 14 talks about. He was subtle. He didn't come out and say, I'm an arch rebel. I hate Elohim. I want to kick him off of his throne, and I want to take his place. I don't think Adam and Eve would have bought into that. And similarly, the devil doesn't just come to us and just in a red suit with a forked, pointy little tail and horns and a pitchfork. I'm the devil. Follow me and I'll lead you to hell. He doesn't come that way. He comes as a beautiful creature, alluring. He may come as look, prostitutes. Let's look at a prostitute. They don't come as a dumpy, frumpy, old woman with warts and with her body figure shaped like a pear or whatever, and hair falling out and a few teeth missing or whatever. I mean, pick whatever idea you conjure up. With disheveled hair and frumpy looking dress or ragtag tattered looking, smelling like body odor or whatever. No, they dress themselves up. They adorn themselves. They paint lipstick on. They put very seductive clothing on and all of that stuff. Okay, just imagine that in your mind without me explaining it to you. And that's how Satan comes. He comes as an angel of light, as a wolf in sheep's clothing. So we must not be ignorant of his devices. If you're looking for idolatry, he puts an idol out there in front of you. And if you're looking for a golden calf or some crazy looking idol that's something that the Egyptians or the Sumerians or the Babylonians or the Canaanites worshipped, and he says, yeah, worship this. Yeah, right. Maybe that's what they did then, but that's not what we do now. If you're expecting to come like some evil demonic spirit that's looks like some grotesque gargoyle somewhere or out of some monster some horror movie, no, he's not going to do that. He's going to come beautiful and alluring. He's going to give you something, that beautiful woman, a beautiful car, money, riches, wealth, fame, all those things that most human beings want. A big house and women and all these things. That's how he's going to come. And he's going to try to draw people away. Whatever your weakness is, that's what he will use. And he's got a religion and a religious system just for you. Tailor fit just for you. And if not, you can develop your own spirituality. I'm spiritual. I have my own spirituality, which is a mixture of this and a mixture of that and this and this. And I've got my own little God, my little religious system here, my own little spirituality that I feel very comfortable with, and it allows me to do this and do this and do this sin and this sin without any accountability and without any thought about what the consequences might be. And that's the deception of the whole thing. And that's secular humanism. Secular humanism comes in all different shapes and sizes and forms, tailor fit to fit everybody. I like to liken it like this. If you have a compass, there's only one direction to true north. But there's 359 azimuths, or points on the compass that point in any other direction. For those that want to go the opposite direction, they can head south. For those that want to go in that direction, they can head west or east. For those who want to follow the truth, but they just want to be off a little bit, you can follow, instead of following 0, you can be 1 degree off, or 2, or 3, or 4. One way or the other. He's got something for everybody. But there's only one path that leads to true north. On that compass. One compass bearing. One azimuth. Yes, it is a narrow path. The gate is straight, and few there be that find it. So in the Garden of Eden, Satan attempted to subvert the purpose of Elohim by calling into question the character of Elohim to Adam and Eve. We talked about that. The serpent successfully lowered man's esteem for Elohim and at the same time elevated man's esteem for himself. Yes, I am my own God. I am on the throne of my life. I haven't sinned. I haven't done anything wrong. I. Yes, when you hear people talking about I, me, a whole lot, instead of pointing people to Yehovah Elohim, to Yeshua the Messiah, or to his word, beware. Beware. Yes, the biblical record reveals that Satan continually pits the forces of his kingdom and anything that will compromise Yehovah's authority, one against the other. The most notable example of that is Revelation 13, where we see an end-time religious system. And Yeshua inspires John, gives him a revelation where John sees a series of vision involving monster-like creatures empowered by Satan, which stand in defiant opposition to the creator of the universe and to Yeshua the Messiah. And the end times, these satanic forces will infiltrate the Christian church and plant doctrines of demons therein, and attempt to plant seeds of rebellion against the word of Elohim. 1 Timothy 4:1. Yes, secular humanism at its most fundamental level seeks to dethrone Elohim as a creator, ruler, lawgiver, and judge of the universe, who will call into accountability everybody for all the sins that they have done. And secular humanism with Satan behind it. He's the puppet master. He's the puppet master behind, or he's the breath. He's the life force, not life force, death force behind the religion of secular humanism. And the idea is to not only to eliminate Yehovah altogether from having any influences in the affairs of man, and is, if possible, to totally move people into atheism and totally out rebellion against everything having to do with Elohim. And in reality, men have become followers of Satan the devil and are following him in his rebellion against Elohim, which he started way back when as Lucifer, when he rebelled against Elohim in Isaiah 14. So with Elohim supposedly dethroned now, and man having replaced Elohim on the throne of his life, man now usurps Elohim's authority. Now that we've eliminated Elohim from our frame of reference, from our orientation, from our following him, now we can determine what is right. Now we can do what we feel like. Now we can pursue the lusts of flesh, the lusts of the eyes and pride of life, and do whatever we want. And after all, there is no God. I am the God of my life, and so there's nobody to tell me what to do or what not to do. And since God doesn't exist, since there is no Elohim, then there is no judgment seat. And since I have an immortal soul, I believe in reincarnation, I believe in this, I believe in that philosophy, whatever. I'll live forever. And even if I don't, if there is no life after death, I'm going to have a good time here and now, regardless. And of course, Satan doesn't tell man how he's going to end up. Because if he told him that, he may not have as many buyers. You know what I mean? So, at the core of humanistic philosophy is the assumption that man is innately good. In other words, he is without sin. He has not sinned, which is contrary to the truth of the Bible. The Bible says that all men have sinned. Sin is rebellion to the rules and the authority and the truth of Elohim. And of course, when we recognize what sin is and recognize what a rebellion and authority is, that means we got to recognize that there is one who determines what sin is, one who is a lawgiver, one who tells us what to do and what not to do, and one who will hold us accountable. Just like we have legal systems in place in civil governments. If we break the laws, we pay the price. Well, men don't like that. They want to do what they want. And they don't want to pay the price, and they do not want somebody telling them what to do. That's part of the fallen nature. That's part of the rebelliousness of men, and that's what Satan is trying to hook into and get man to join in his rebellion against Elohim. And that's the bottom line of secular humanism. That man is good, he was born good, and therefore there is no such thing as sin. And of course, that is exactly, and if there's no sin, then there's no laws that can be broken. And if there's no laws that can be broken, then I can do whatever I want. You see how this all ties together. And now I'm the God of my own life, and I can do whatever I want. Francis Schaeffer describes secular humanism this way, and I quote, "It is a consensus that stands in total antithesis to the Christian truth at every point, including the denial of the supernatural, belief in all sufficiency of human reason, the rejection of the fall of man into sin, and denial the deity of Christ and his resurrection, and belief in the perfectibility of man and the destruction of the Bible. And with this has come a total moral breakdown." And that's from his book, The Great Evangelical Disaster, page 35 and 36. So, we see that Satan, as already noted, is the originator and the prime instigator behind the anti-God or anti-Elohim religious philosophy of secular humanism. Satan rebelled against his creator, as I said, characterized by the 5 I will statements of Isaiah 14, 13 through 14, which all can be summarized by his final assertion, "I will be like the Most High." That's what he said, and is recorded in Isaiah 14, 13, and 14. At the tree of the knowledge, Satan disguised himself as a serpent and conned men into buying into this same idea that man can be like Elohim by rebelliously disregarding the word of the Creator. When he said in Genesis 3:4, "Hath Elohim said, hath Elohim said." And that was the doubt and unbelief and the lie that Satan planted to question the word of Elohim. And we have people questioning this all the time. This is just a book of fantasy. This is just a book of fairy tales. This is just this is just that. And we see it all the time. These are liars from the pit of hell, and they bought into the father of lies, Satan the devil, and they are following the religion of secular humanism that leads to death, hell, and the grave. Yes, to this day, the proponents of secular humanism and his philosophy adhere to the idea that man is God and that God or Elohim is non-existent, or if he does exist, he is irrelevant. God is dead, they say. Either way, man is his own God and is at the center of the universe and is the sole determiner of what is right and wrong. And in no way does he need Elohim for anything, nor is man answerable to any supreme being for his actions. So this is the bottom line of what secular humanism teaches. It's about the dethroning or the diminishing, at the very least, of Elohim's influence in man's life. And the will and the mind of man take precedence over that of Elohim. This facilitates the rise of mind or soul-centered religious systems where the mind, the will, and the emotions of man reign supreme. Man charts his own course without the outside influence of the Creator. He creates his own spiritual paradigm, his own spirituality. He chooses one of those points on the compass. He's got 359 choices, or more than that actually. He can go in any direction he wants, except the one path that Yehovah has told him to go on. So man charts his own course. Humanism therefore places man on the throne of his life and replaces the worship of Elohim with the worship of man. Humanism is a self-deifying philosophy where the Creator is worshipped more than the Creator. This path leads man on the downward moral and spiritual spiral that we read about in Romans 1:18 through 32, resulting in man worshiping himself and not the Creator, and turning away from the truth and believing the lie of the devil, which is what Paul talks about there in Romans 1, starting in verse 18. And the result is a morally debased and spiritually bankrupt civilization, ending in the Creator's judgment on man, as Paul talks about in verse 32. Humanism places a heavy emphasis on ensuring that matter supersedes and excludes the spirit realm of Elohim. Humanism is the deification of self or matter, or the physical, the earth and the being, and that's why sex and sex worship and earth worship are so important. That's why evolution and radical environmentalism and socialistic and fascistic and communistic forms of government, homosexuality, all hedonism, and all of these things are all expressions of self-gratification, entertainment, sports, pursuit of materialism, wealth, power. All of these things are all manifestations of secular humanism. So I hope you found that enlightening. That was a long teaching, but it's something that if you understand the fundamentals of secular humanism and how it goes back to the lies of Satan the devil at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will realize the battle, this ongoing perennial battle that's been going on between Satan and Yehovah Elohim from the very beginning. In fact, before the creation of man, in the satanic rebellion, they're talked about in Isaiah 14. And hopefully this gives you the background that you need so you can be better equipped and better armed to fight Satan inside your life, your mind, your will, and your emotions, and outside by not being ignorant of his devices. And the way to fight him is to submit to the lordship of Yeshua the Messiah and the word of Elohim, and a path that will lead to everlasting life and an ongoing relationship with Yeshua the Messiah and his Father in heaven that leads to a spiritual inheritance and eternal life in his kingdom forever.
Call upon his name. He's near, he's near, he's near. Yeshua Hashem Be'himatzov Keravu Yoto Karov, Karov Yasov Rasha Darko Leishavim Machshevotav Yashovel Ad Hashem Ki Arbe Is Yeshua Hashem Be'himatzov Keravu Yota Karov, Karov 姫待つ